Okay, let's get started. All right, hello everyone. My name is Kristin McGurl, and welcome to Health Literacy Month, Week 2 from Shape America. I sit on the Shape America Health Education Council, and I am also a secondary health education teacher. Today, I'm joined by Mary Connelly. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Connelly, and I am the program chair of Skills-Based Health, Social Emotional Learning at Cambridge College. And I am a health education consultant and the author of several books.
So this week, week 2 of Health Literacy Month, we're taking our focus to mental health education. And we put together a little presentation for all of you on using social emotional learning competencies to enhance student mental health. So I want to give you kind of just a little bit of a background of how we got here. And really how we came up with this presentation. So as a secondary health education teacher, and all health education teachers, when social emotional learning really became a push into schools a few years ago, it was like the green light of this is health education. And it fits so perfectly into our units and our classrooms and our work with our students. And myself, I noticed that I would always find the competency I wanted to use, and it would fit so well into the skill that I was teaching my students. But then as I went through my units, over time, I realized, well, am I really assessing this skill? Like I questioned myself. It was there. It was in our practice activities. It was in my objectives. But then I was noticing I'm not actually assessing if my students are competent on this SEL competency. So really our objectives for today are becoming aware that each SEL competency has sub-competencies and that they can be used to improve your teen mental health. And then to learn to assess the SEL sub-competency along with national health education performance indicators, which again, I had stated, I really realized I wasn't doing that. And I know talking to a lot of my colleagues that they were struggling with the same thing. And then to plan instruction based on backwards design. So how do we look at data? How does that data drive our standards and our SEL competencies that we're using in our units? Then how are we going to assess that? And what is the instruction? How are we getting this to all of our students? How are we, creating this path for them, their learning experience?
So what is the difference between a skill and a competency? In order to explain this to you, I just did a little bit of digging. And on the left, we can see skill. And I went to Merriam-Webster and found the definition of doing something competently. So if we think of our national health education standards, that may mean that we are competent in making healthy decisions and analyzing influences and so forth. Now let's take a look at the CASEL competency definition. And this is right from the CASEL website. CASEL defines CASEL competency as an ability to acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So they have a little bit of a broader definition of their competency. It includes skills. On our side, for the National Health Ed Standards, we're saying competency is in the skill, and that happens when we become competent in the performance indicators for that grade span. So they're similar, but they're not the same. But if you can click the next one, if we become proficient and proficiency increases as both as a person are, so proficiency increases in both as a person becomes more competent in each.
So where do you start? So I always start with an analysis of the data, and I always start by finding myself on the CDC website and looking at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. This is national data, and then you can also gear down towards your state. So I would be looking at New York State, but then I also want to emphasize that each school community is unique and each building is unique. So looking at what data exists for your school building, talking to some of the stakeholders in the community of maybe what data they've gathered in the community. So I know that my community has an amazing nonprofit organization that collects a lot of health data and data for our students.
So let's look at the mental health data. So for Youth Online from CDC, 42.3% of the students who took the survey felt sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row, so that they stopped doing some usual activities during 12 months before the survey. And then it's really important to look at how that breaks down. In this case, 56.6% of the girls and 28.6% of boys had that feeling of sad or hopelessness. So that helps us when we're planning our lessons to know the demographics, what's happening here and who is experiencing more of that risk factor. It's just very helpful when you're planning. Another data set from CDC is 29.3% of the students who took the survey reported that their mental health was most of the time or always not good. Poor mental health includes stress, anxiety, and depression during the 30 days before the survey. And that also breaks down to girls having more of an issue, girls having 40.8%, and boys having 18.1% of the mental health most of the time or always is not good. So that's always very helpful to know what the data actually means. And then from an article, Anxiety in Teens is Rising, What's Going On? They cite, according to the National Institutes of Health, that nearly 1 in 3 of all adolescents ages 13 to 18 will experience an anxiety disorder. Between 2007 and 2012, anxiety disorders in children and teens went up 20%. So this is a real issue, and I'm so glad that Kristin is working on mental health as part of the Health Council, and that we're working together to present some ideas to you. So let's take a look at this wheel and examine it a little bit and ask ourselves, how can those SEL competencies help us plan lessons that will improve the mental health of our youth? Let's take a step back a little bit and take a look at those at the inside of that wheel. You'll notice that the competencies have different colors. Well, what do they mean? Self-awareness and self-management are orange, and they have the same color because they are skills for self-development. They are skills for ourselves so that we can become better as individuals to improve ourselves. If we take a look at the greens competencies, social awareness and relationship skills, those two are aligned because they are skills for social development. These skills help us communicate better. They make us more aware of our surroundings and how our actions affect someone else's actions, perceptions, and so forth. And then we have the lonely, responsible decision-making there off to the right. However, it is by itself. However, but if we really think about it, we can make much better, healthier decisions if we are competent in the other 4 competencies. So although it is single by itself, it is enhanced by us being competent in the other 4 competencies. If you go on the CASEL website, you will find this chart. And it's an interesting one because once again, you'll see the color-coded squares on this worksheet. And what I'd like to do is show you how they align to the National Health Ed standards. First, we have self-awareness. And self-awareness aligns with our standard 2, analyzing influences. If we become self-aware, it helps us to analyze what is influencing our behavior. So there's a direct alignment there. Self-management is aligned with 2 of our standards. One is our own self-management, practicing healthy behaviors, and also goal setting. Then we go down to social awareness, and that's in alignment with our standard 3, accessing information. And then relationship skills is the other green competency, and that has 2 standards aligned with it. The first one is interpersonal communication, and then standard 8, advocacy. And then we have responsible decision-making, a direct alignment with our decision-making. So you can see, as Kristin mentioned before, you're doing SEL. And what we're going to try to do for you today is to show you that direct alignment. And sometimes you don't need to do any extra assessment. It's assessed right along with the standard because they're so aligned in the example of responsible decision-making. And other times you do need to do an additional assessment and instruction. But remember, standard 1 aligns with each of the standards. And when we are preparing, we always pair a standard 1 performance indicator with a skills performance indicator. And sometimes the SEL competency will align more with the content performance indicator than with the skills. Sometimes you have 2 competency, one aligned with the content, one aligned with the skill. It all depends on what it is that you're trying to do. But this is a good example of how you can target your instruction, target your assessment, and have it founded in the National Health Ed Standards along with the SEL Competencies, which of course is a national organization.
Okay, so moving forward, what's really the role of a skills-based and SEL educator, skills-based health educator and SEL educator? So it's really to design student engaging and age-appropriate instruction with targeted feedback and targeted formative assessments. And targeted feedback is going to be effective feedback for your students. As students learn SEL competencies, they become more self-aware and they develop more self-confidence. And then it's our job as the educator to use practice prompts as daily vehicles to demonstrate and reinforce content, reinforce skill, and then reinforce SEL competencies. The teacher challenges students to determine how feelings influence their behavior. So if the feeling is identified as a positive feeling, the student learns to reinforce the influence. If it's identified as a negative feeling, they learn healthy coping strategies. I always like to say as an educator, and tell my students that our thoughts give us feelings, and then our ability to recognize our thoughts and regulate those feelings are going to directly impact healthy versus non-healthy behavior. So providing effective targeted feedback to students as they practice helps guide and direct the student to proficiency of the performance indicator and SEL competency. And then successful completion of a skill practice, it gives students the self-confidence to learn other skills. They'll develop self-efficacy and ultimately a growth mindset. And I like to say, for example, when you're giving feedback to students, and instead of thinking of it as you did a great job, this looks great, it needs to be targeted. So this is excellent. Your decision-making demonstration showed each of the steps very clearly and accurately. And then even maybe reviewing one of those steps and why you think that. Why are you giving them that feedback?
So let's take a closer look at self-awareness. Self-awareness and self-management are linked because they are skills that regulate an individual's emotions, thoughts, values, and behavior. They help us assess our strengths, set our goals, manage and motivate ourselves with a sense of confidence. And how do we help students decrease anxiety and increase teen mental health? Well, we can plan some lessons. There's my textbook, Teaching Social and Emotional Learning. That's where we have taken the lessons for this session. So I hope you enjoy them. All of the worksheets come with the textbook. So if you like them, then I hope you like it and maybe we'll use it. So we will have one lesson in self-awareness, and that's about moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And then we have 2 lessons on self-management. One is on stress management, and the other one is on impulse control. So self-awareness, once again, I already read you the description of that, but take a look down below where the bullets are and see how many of those are you actually doing already? I bet there are many of them. Identifying personal, cultural, and linguistic assets, identifying emotions. That's a very common one when the students come in, right? They identify how they're feeling that day. Linking feelings, values, and thoughts, as Kristin mentioned a few slides ago. Examining prejudice and biases. How important is that these days? Really important. Self-efficacy is one of the main characteristics of skills-based health. We teach baby steps until they are competent in the skill. And that same kind of a strategy can work for social emotional learning and these competencies here. Growth mindset is a really interesting thing to study and to teach. I found it quite interesting writing this part, and I enjoyed it. And developing interest and a sense of purpose is something that we don't think about often, but maybe you already do that. So here's an example on self-awareness. Remember that we're going to be using backwards design. And just as a review, what does backwards design mean? First of all, you take a look at data. We've already done that a few slides ago. I showed you 3 examples of data showing that mental health issues are very big in our country, according to CDC and in articles that are available. So number one, gather your data. And as Kristin said, use CDC, use your state data, use your local data. And it's very nice to be able to compare the 3 to see how your students are doing in comparison to state and national data. Once you have that data, then ask yourself, which of these performance indicators will help me decrease that data? You always pick a standard 1 performance indicator for your grade span, and then you go through the other skills and say, which one would really be the best one? And you know what? There is no best one. It's up to you to figure out which one will be best for your students. And it's all based on what you know about your own students. And then once you establish those performance indicators and your SEL competency, they usually begin with a verb. So then you step down to 3, assessment, and you ask yourself the assessment question. What will my students have to do to show me they're proficient in these performance indicators? What will they have to do to show me they're proficient in that SEL competency? And you write out your assessment. Once you've established your assessment, then you're going to ask yourself the instruction question. What do I need to teach so that they will be successful on that assessment? In this particular lesson, we're looking at a grade PK2 self-awareness and analyzing influence lesson, and it's on mental and emotional health. And it's about growth mindset, and Natalie is the person in the prompt. The lesson overview is about Natalie. She's uncomfortable working in a group, and through her experience with her peers, she moves from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Let's see how she did that. So let's take a look at step 1, the data for this lesson. It's very difficult to find data on growth mindset for young people, but I did manage to find this interesting study about older students. National Study of Learning Mindsets reported that an online growth mindset intervention program improved grades for the targeted group of students in a secondary education who previously showed lower achievement. There's a ton of data out there about the effects of having that growth mindset. So take a look. If it interests you, I find it really interesting. Take a look and search for research that's been done. I think you'll find it very interesting. And step 2, what standards did I pick to help poor Natalie? Well, I picked standard 1, PK2, and the first performance indicator in the list. That's what that number means, 1.2.1. Standard 1, PK2, the first performance indicator in the list. The verb is identify. Identify that healthy behaviors, and here I have italicized the content that I have infused into the performance indicator, such as participating in a group, affecting personal health. And the SEL competency there is self-awareness, growth mindset. Notice that on the second bullet, 253, it's standard 2, Analyzing Influences, but it's grade 3 to 5. And it's the third performance indicator in the list. Now, why in the world did I do that? Well, sometimes you may find that the performance indicator for your grade span just isn't what you need. And you may find one in another grade span that works better for you. And that's what I did here. I chose a 3-5 performance indicator instead of a PK2. So this one, the verb is identify, once again, how peers influence healthy and unhealthy behaviors. And the italicized is the content when working in a group. The SEL competency is self-awareness, and as up above, the sub-competency is growth mindset. So step 3, assessment. So now I have my performance indicators, and I have to ask myself, what can my kids do to show me they can do that performance indicator? Well, for a standard 1-2-1, if the students can identify one way participating in a group affects their personal health, I'm good with that. That means that they listened. You'll be hearing a prompt in a minute, that they listened to the prompt and they were able to pick out one way the group helped little Natalie. And what will the students have to do for the skill? Well, if they can identify 2 ways peer influenced a healthy and an unhealthy behavior when working in a group, I'll be okay with that. I will be comfortable that the students are showing me proficiency in that skill performance indicator. What do they have to do for the growth mindset sub-competency? If they can give me an example of how a person changes their mindset from fixed to growth, I'll feel really good about that. They were able to see in the prompt how Natalie changed, and that will make me realize in this assessment that they got it. So now what do I have to teach so that they will be successful in that assessment? For the content 1-2-1, I'm going to ask the children to raise their hand if they like to work in a group, if they like to work alone. I'm going to ask them, can you change how you feel about working with others? And then there is a worksheet 3.19, moving from a fixed to a growth mindset, to show how attitudes can change with good rules and coaching. I think you'll find that one helpful. And the instruction for the skill 2.5.3, I'm going to really teach and ask the children, how do peers influence you in a good way, in a healthy way? Give me examples. And how do your friends, how do your peers influence you in an unhealthy way? Give me some examples. And I think you'll see the worksheet there in the next click. There it is. Okay.
All right, now that we have some background knowledge of the lesson, I'm going to go through the lesson prompt and I'm going to model what I would do with students. So I'm going to act as the teacher and you all are going to be the class. Welcome, class. Today we're going to learn about Natalie. Natalie is not comfortable working in a group. She doesn't think she's a good writer and she is afraid her peers will think she is not smart. So she does her work, but she keeps quiet. Mrs. Sorrento, the health teacher, wants to help Natalie gain confidence working in a group. So she encouraged Natalie to take on a small writing role within her group. Her peers were very kind and liked the way she wrote. Natalie was feeling better about being in a group. When the group was asked to write a prompt for a role play, they turned to Natalie. She felt confident about writing, but didn't want to role play. One day, the girl who had a speaking part in the role play was absent. The group asked Natalie to act out the words she wrote. Natalie didn't want to let the group down, so she said yes. They practiced and they encouraged Natalie. Because our group was so supportive, she gained confidence, and after the presentation, she felt great. She was smiling, enjoyed watching the faces of her peers as she acted out the words she wrote. After class, Natalie told Mrs. Sorrento that she enjoyed her new role and looks forward to writing and acting again. I would move in asking questions to the class. How did Natalie change her mindset from fixed to growth? Mary, what do you think?
Oh, I think she wasn't comfortable first. She didn't want to do anything in the group, but her friends in the group made her feel really comfortable, and they told her how much they liked it. And that gave her confidence, and she felt really good. And now she believes she can be in a group. Is that right, Ms. McGurl?
That is correct. The group supported her, they gave her confidence, and she started to feel good about herself and started to feel as though she could do it. Now, the end of class and the review and exit ticket is always going to reinforce what our performance indicators were. So again, if I'm modeling this as the teacher, I might in the end of class review say, how did Natalie's participation in the group make her feel? What is one, Mary?
She felt great because she could do it, and she was afraid at first, but then she did it and she felt great.
That was a great response, Mary. What is one thing the group did to help Natalie feel comfortable? Mary.
They told her that she did a good job, and such a good job they asked her to write again, and then they asked her to role play. So they really liked her work. Is that right, Miss McGurl?
That is correct, Mary. And then the exit ticket, I'm going to use our SEL competency of self-awareness and growth mindset. How could you help a friend who wants to join your after-school activity club but doesn't think she would fit in? And I want to reinforce that your end of class review questions and exit tickets, they always refer back to your performance indicators. And just as like, I guess, a food for thought, I'm sure many of you already do it, but myself as an educator, I find it so important for me when I am planning, my review and exit tickets is to take my performance indicators and plug them right into my questions so that I know that I am assessing my students correctly. So we're now going to play you a little video to kind of reinforce what the lesson was about. Mary and I thought that this would be fun, and we're going to take all of these videos and have a resource sheet of them, and that will be accessible to you on the Shape America website. And it's just really, again, to talk about growth mindset with your students. And this is geared towards our younger students. So I am going to pull up the video. Play.
You wanna do something that's new, and it seems really, really hard to do. You feel like quitting, you feel you're through. Well, I have some advice for you. Don't give up. Keep on trying. You're gonna make it. I ain't lying. Don't give up. Don't ever quit. Try, and you can do it. Don't give up. Yeah. If you want to catch a ball, but you're having no luck at all, the ball hits your head, it hits your nose, it hits your belly, your chin and toes. Well, try again. Keep on trying, and soon then you'll put your hands out in the air. You'll catch that ball, yes, this I swear. Don't give up. Keep on going, you're on the ball, so keep on going, don't give up. Don't ever stop. Try, and you'll come out on top. Don't give up. You got yourself in roller skates. You put them on and you feel great. You stand up, but then you fall. Don't think you can skate at all. You get back up and then you trip. You spin to bed, slip and flip. Try and try some more. And soon you're skating across the floor. So keep on moving, you're gonna get there. Just keep on grooving, don't give up. Don't pack it in. Try, and you will win. Don't give up. No, 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 don't give up.
And the others are equally as cute. Okay.
So now let's take a look at another lesson, and this lesson is on self-management. And here we have the description of self-management. I've already read that to you, but take a look at the sub-competencies down below. Managing emotions, that's really important in the classroom. Identifying using stress management strategies, that's a really good skill for us to have and our students to have. Exhibiting self-discipline, self-motivation, these are really important behaviors for students to have in our classroom. Setting goals, that's our standard 6 right there. Organizational skills will certainly help your teaching as well as the students being able to manage their own learning. Taking initiative, that takes courage, and demonstrating personal and collective agency. So here we have students with self-management. They manage stress, delay gratification, motivate themselves, and set work toward personal goals. They come to class prepared, pay attention in class, follow directions, allow others to speak without interrupting them, and work independently. And once again, self-management and self-awareness are linked because they are skills to help us develop ourselves better so that we have more competency in our own abilities.
So now we're going to show you a lesson on teaching self-management. And this lesson is going to be geared towards grades 3 through 5. And it's going to be about Josie. And in this lesson, students identify sources of stress and learn stress reduction strategies. So step 1 is the data. About 14% of children ages 8 to 12 say they worry a lot or a great deal. I just, being a health educator in a school, can attest that I see that every day. Now we're looking at what is going to be our National Health Education Standards and our SEL standards that we're going to use in this lesson. So 1.51, describe the relationship between healthy behaviors such as using stress-reducing strategies and personal health. That's going to be our content, our standard 1. And then our skill is going to be 752, demonstrate a variety of healthy practices and behaviors such as stress reduction strategies to maintain or improve personal health. And our SEL, we're looking at self-management and the sub-competency of stress management. So when I'm looking now at assessing my students, I want students to identify 2 stressors that they have in their lives. And then I want students to demonstrate 2 ways to reduce stress. So when I'm looking into my instruction, I'm going to first review to you what would I have as the teacher. So now I'm going to move back into the teacher role, what I would have prepared first for my students, and then how I'm going to move them into the activities. So on the board, I'm going to have my students draw the positive and negative signs. And I'm going to explain the difference to them between positive stress and negative stress. So, what is my difference? Then I'm going to give all of my students Post-it notes, and I call it a sticky splash. So students will write down 2 sources of positive stress that they have in their lives, now based off of knowing what is positive stress. And then they're going to give me 2 sources of negative stress, distress in their lives. And then after they have that and they've written it all down, we're going to have a splash. So they're going to place their stickies on the board under the appropriate heading, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, and we're going to discuss it as a whole class. And it could be a long discussion, a short discussion, but I'm going to start reading off of them, or ask a student to read off of our Post-it notes and have this discussion on positive and negative stress. Then I'm going to move into teaching them how to belly breathe, and then also teach other ways to reduce stress. A fun thing in stress I just want to point out too is I always try to provide a variety of stress techniques, because you need a variety of techniques in your toolbox based on what setting you're in. If your only technique is you love to go on a run, you can't do that in the middle of a math test. So they need a variety of tools. So first I'm going to show them the squish and relax strategy. Then I might show them hero pose. Then I might show them easy pose. And I might show them child pose. And then I'm going to move into the student prompt for the day. So Josie is new to this country. Josie only knows how to speak in his native language and is finding school impossible. In his home country, he loves science and did very well in school. Here, every day is stressful. He just wants to stay home with his grandmother and tend to the backyard garden. The ESL teacher encourages him to be patient and has reminded him of the progress he has made since September. He knows she is right, but every day is a difficult day. In his health class, the teacher demonstrated different ways to stretch, a special way to breathe, a yoga pose. He was able to do the poses by watching the teacher and his classmates. The stretches felt really good, and the deep breathing started to relax him. He liked the exercise where he tightened and then relaxes the muscles from his toes to his head. At least in this class, he could do what everyone else was doing, and that made him feel good. Josie plans to teach these exercises to his family tonight because they are also very stressed. How did Josie identify his sources of stress and learn stress reduction strategies? So now I'm moving into questioning the class. Mary, what do you think?
Well, Josie is new and he doesn't speak English, so school is really hard for him. He doesn't understand what the teachers are saying. But when the teacher showed him how to do the yoga poses, he didn't have to know English to do it. And he did them and he felt good.
Great job, Mary. Which 4 stress reduction strategies did Josie demonstrate in class that would help improve his personal health? Mary?
Squish and relax. He did the squish and relax strategy. He did the easy pose. He did the child pose. And he did the hero pose. And he also did the 4 square belly breathing.
Nice job. So then I would move into the end of class review and the exit ticket with my students. In the end of class review, I would have my students demonstrate belly breathing, demonstrate the squish and relax strategy, demonstrate the easy pose. They would demonstrate child's pose, and they would demonstrate the hero's pose. So here I am assessing and reviewing the skill. Then I would move them into the exit ticket. So now I want to look at self-management and stress management. And I would look at worksheet 4.9. How am I feeling now? And that is going to assess our standard 1 in this lesson.
All right, now let's move up to grades 6 to 8, self-management. And this lesson is about impulse control, self-discipline, and self-motivation around texting. So in this particular lesson, students learn the importance of being motivated to use self-discipline to control their impulses when texting. This is a challenge, right? So step 1, what kind of data is there out there? Well, in 2019, a study of more than 6,500 students aged 12 to 15 found that those who spent more than 3 hours a day using social media might be at heightened risk for mental health problems. And that's what we're trying to target with you today. Step 2, what performance indicators did I pick for this lesson? Well, I picked standard 1, grade 6 to 8, the 7th performance indicator in the list. It reads, describe is the verb, the benefits of and barriers to practicing healthy behaviors. And here is the content when struggling with impulse control when texting. The skill performance indicator I chose was standard 7, grade 6 to 8, the 2nd performance indicator. The verb is demonstrate. Demonstrate healthy practices and behaviors that maintain or improve the health of self and others. And here's the content, such as using the THINK process when texting. And the SEL competency and sub-competency is self-management, and the sub-competency is impulse control, self-discipline, and self-motivation. Step 3 is the assessment. The question you ask yourself is, what what will the students do to show me they are proficient in these performance indicators? And well, if the students can describe 2 benefits of and 2 barriers to practicing healthy behaviors when struggling with impulse control, I'm okay with that. They're thinking about it. What are the benefits of and the barriers to? I'm fine with 2 of each, if as long as they're accurate, which they will be. And then what will the assessment be for the skill? Well, if they can demonstrate how to use the think process when texting, I'll be very happy with that. And what about the assessment for SEL? Once again, if they can demonstrate how to motivate themselves to be disciplined to control impulses, I'm really good with that. And that takes us back to standard 1.8.7, the content. Also, there's a worksheet 4.4 that I can use for that assessment. And then step 4, instruction, you ask yourself, what do I need to teach so that they can do those assessments? Well, for content, I want them to describe the benefits and barriers. So I'm going to talk about what are the benefits and what are the barriers when struggling with impulse control. And then for the skill, I'm going to teach them the think method, go through it, and then they will practice it. And let's talk about the prompt. Maddie's mom and dad finally bought her a phone so she can call if she misses the bus or is staying after school. Maddie is very excited because she can finally text and use the apps her friends talk about. Her parents warned her about using social media and to be careful when she texts. Today, the coach made a cut for track and field. Maddie made the cut, but Mary didn't. Maddie thinks it's because she's put on weight and can't run very fast. Maddie was about to text her friends the news when Jerry came by and asked her what she was doing. Maddie told her that she was going to tell everyone that Mary didn't make the team because she's put on so much weight. Oh boy. What? Don't send that text. Why? Asked Maddie. Well, how do you think Mary will feel when she reads it? Let's think it through. Maddie looks perplexed, but Mary asks, is this what you're saying true? We don't know. That's the T, right? You have to think about that. Number 2, is the text helpful to Mary? That's the H. I don't think so. Number 3, will it inspire her to try out again for the team? That's the I. Probably not. And 4, is that what you want? Is what you want to text necessary? Probably isn't. She's just so excited that she can text. She wants to say something. And number 5, are your words kind? They certainly are not. So if a child, a grade 6 to 8 child, can think before they text, maybe it will save a lot of anxiety, depression, social problems. So it's a good little trick to use when you're teaching about social media, the think process. Maddie didn't think about any of those things. She was just excited to text her friends. You're right, Jerry. I am glad you made me think about what I was doing, said Maddie. That would have been very unkind and hurtful. If I sent it, none of you would ever trust me again. Maddie is now trying very hard not to be so impulsive, but to think before she acts. She's motivated to improve her relationship with her friends, gain confidence of her parents, and discipline herself to control her pesky impulses. When she is tempted to act impulsively, she practices deep breathing and tries a few mindfulness activities. Maddie still struggles, but she's working hard and disciplining herself not to give in to her impulses. So after you read the prompt, then you ask the class some questions to see if they understood what you were saying, if they can then answer the performance indicator questions. So these are some examples of what the questions would be. And as Kristin said before, just take your performance indicators and turn them into a question. What are 2 benefits and 2 barriers of practicing healthy behaviors when struggling with impulse control? See if they can pick out 2 benefits to Maddie for not being impulsive and two benefits. So 2 benefits and 2 barriers. And then continue by asking the students, how did Maddie demonstrate the think process? And this would be a good place to review what THINK means, have a little discussion on it. Is it something they've ever thought of doing? Do they think they could use it now? Take some time to process that. And then your SEL question, how did Maddie demonstrate how to motivate herself to be disciplined, to control impulses when using social media? She was just so excited to be able to text. She wasn't thinking. And here would be the end of class review. The 2 questions for the content and 1 for the skill, and the exit ticket. How would you help a peer be motivated to control their impulsive behavior? So that would be a nice sort of turn and talk, or a sticky splash going out the door. But your exit ticket, you always want them you want to challenge them. How can you use this information outside of class? So they're learning things in health class, but our hope is that they'll take that with them, right, and use it outside of class. So I always like to ask questions about how would you help a peer? And I think that's a good way of using the exit ticket.
I agree, Mary. That's what I always do. Okay, so I know we're running a little short on time, but I really want to review this quickly with everyone. And this is just an example backwards design lesson. And I use this in my classroom and to help me plan my units and individual lessons. So I just kind of wanted to review of how we set this up. And it might look like a lot when you're looking on the screen, but once you do 1 or 2 of them, it becomes so beneficial to you as the teacher, and really ensuring that your lessons are sequenced, you're meeting the assessment that you want, you're hitting the SEL competency that you want, and you're really meeting your standards. So I want to review first. When you look over here, we'll have our lesson criteria and then our unit. So what unit are we on? What is our topic? So this is specifically to that fixed mindset and growth mindset lesson we talked about earlier, and we're hitting grades PK through 2. We only get 30 minutes with them, if we're lucky. And then our lesson summary. So students learn the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset, and the importance of not giving up when something goes wrong or is difficult. Then you're going to align it to your standards. Here it's aligned to Massachusetts health and physical education standards. For me, it would be aligned to New York State, and for you, your own. So then here you have the context. So I want to kind of go over why, to me, the context of the lesson is so important. It's really, what should the teacher know going into this lesson? So what do I need to know for my students as I am moving into this lesson? This is super important for me as a secondary high school health teacher, because I will every year have the one phys ed teacher that's like a rotating door of who is teaching that 1 or 2 courses of health with me, just the way that the class size for that year worked out. And it will always be somebody new, and they are very busy with phys ed. And they might have taught health maybe 3 years ago, maybe never, maybe they taught it for 2 years with me, and you're working with them. And so this is so important for me to have, not only to remind me when I get to that lesson, okay, what is this lesson? What do I need to know? But to hand it over to them and show, this is the context of the lesson. This is what you need to know. So it's just a really great resource and nice to keep. We keep it all right in a Google Drive folder. Then you have your assessment. So, demonstrate 3 practices of a growth mindset. And then I'm not going to read through everything of our instruction and procedure, but just to go through, I have a welcome and a check-in, and we go over our objectives for the course or for the class, and then a review of where were we, and then a preview of where we are going. How am I going to grab my students for the day? And then I'm looking at my direct instruction. So what do my students need to know? And what do they need to get from me? And that can look different. It can have a variety of teaching methods, but it's what do my students need to be successful when we move on to student practice in our skill. Then our formative assessments. And formative assessment is also happening as I'm walking around, listening to students, questioning students, working with students. And then I'm going to have my end of class review. And here, I can't stress enough how important it is that however I started my class as that review and preview, I need to link it back to my end of the class review. So how do they connect? Because when you can connect the beginning, like the first 5 minutes of class to the last 5 minutes of class, you've now connected everything that you've done in between, and your kids see the bigger picture. So I cannot stress how important that part is. And then our exit ticket. So, did my students get it? Like, did I meet my goals and my objectives of the class? And then moving forward. So again, it looks like a lot, but it's not once you start doing it and going through it. And then I'm going to look over, how am I differentiating instruction? Here I could have like my course 1. What is this class? What might I need to change in this class versus my course 2 class versus my course 3 class? And then exemplars here is, maybe I have a student work to show. So this is what a student has done previously. Students always like to see an example. And I always like to say, I don't want to give you too much because I want you to think and I want you to be creative, but to have those examples. So a lot of times for me, it's a link because my students will hand in on Google Drive. So, all right, I have 4 exemplars and I can link them and pull them right up, when I go in for my day to prepare for my lesson. And then collaboration. So what am I using? How are peers interacting? So for this particular lesson, we had used turn and talk, and students practice positive self-talk and the power of yet. And what materials do I need? And again, if you can have all this in structure year after year, it's great because you can just pull all of your things. And then my resources. So here again was the resources of videos that I used. And maybe myself as the health teacher, I liked video 1 for my kids, but my colleague really likes video 5 for their kids. And then the bottom is reflection. And I want to touch on this because I always think back when I look at lessons, if you can think back to when you were in college and teacher prep, and you would have to fill out the reflection questions on the lesson that you made that you never actually taught. You would kind of just come up with everything and use like the same sentences every time you're writing it. But now that you are the teacher and you are teaching, it's so important for that continuous improvement as an educator to really think like, okay, I did this lesson and this didn't go well and this went well and this, didn't go well for this class, but it really went well for this class, because then as you compare even the same lesson, as you compare those reflection questions after each semester you teach it, after each period you teach it, you can see then where there is a difference in your classes that you're maybe not meeting the need of like a different students, or the class that walks in at 8 a.m. is going to be different than the class that shows up right after lunch. So just like the reflection of your lesson, so you as a teacher have continuous improvement on your work. So now we are going to summarize this presentation for you. So our big takeaways are for you to understand that social emotional learning is a competency. When students practice and master these competencies, they become more proficient in health skills, and they really gain self-confidence.
Another important thing we'd like you to take away is that SEL competencies have a variety of sub-competencies. Understanding these sub-competencies and pairing them throughout your curriculum can directly improve student mental health.
Using data to drive SEL and national health education standards pairing can allow you to use the backward design model to assess SEL competencies.
And finally, assessing SEL competencies throughout your mental health unit is different, but just as important as assessing the skill. And sometimes you can assess both together. It depends on how you're using them. So sometimes you need a separate assessment. Sometimes it is the same as either the content or the skill. It depends on how you set it up. And here is the contact information for both of us. And here is the book that we took our presentation from. And there is my Hotmail and my phone number and my Twitter.
And then also I left you with my email. If you have any questions or want to see examples of this at the secondary level, I do have a few I can share, as well as my Twitter.
Thank you.
Thank you.